All right, so next up, let's tackle the delete functionality and delegate that down to our new person service, okay? So let's go down, I'm in the controller here, and so going down to this delete method here, let's kind of just follow a lot of the same basic approach, I guess. So here we are checking to see if we have any selections present, and if we do, then we call this delete all by ID method. And keep in mind now, currently our deletes don't even delete any accompanying photo file anyway, right? We just never got around to that yet, okay? So now we can have this person service not only delete the person record from the database, but also coordinate the deletion of any uploaded file, okay? All right, so just as we did before, let's just kind of reference the person service and then call a delete. And I suppose we can just do it this way, delete all by ID, and then we'll pass in those same selections just like we're doing up above, okay? And then for right now, maybe I will just comment out the previous method, okay? And then let's jump into this delegate method now. All right, so it's going to attempt to delete all of those records, and that looks like it probably should be fine. However, we also want to delete the files, right? So first off, let's even see what would it look like to try to delete those files, right? So if we were to reference the storage repository, now we haven't implemented a delete method, right? No, we have not. So perhaps we would have a delete. Would we have a delete all? Delete all by what, though? We don't have IDs there. It would have to be by name, I would think, right? Delete all by name, and then perhaps we would pass in a var args of strings, perhaps. Something like that, which would be all of the file names. And then the underlying method maybe could iterate over all of those names and then just delete them. That's one way we could do it. Or we could have the iteration live up here in this business service method where it would iterate over each of those names and delete them. I wouldn't want to spend too much time thinking about where the most appropriate place is to do this. However, I will say this, I guess, because we're talking about needing to delete a bunch of files from the file system, my sense is that it might be slightly more appropriate to do all of that deletion, including its business logic for iterating over them, down in the storage repository itself. Maybe. Okay, but I'm sure anyone could think of some reasons why that might be less ideal under certain circumstances or more ideal under certain circumstances. So for right now, I wouldn't try to spend too much brain power thinking about it, okay? Because you can always refactor later. So let us pretend like we would have a delete all by name, and we could pass in a, let's see, what does this method take? This takes, an iterable. Okay, so yeah, we could pass in something equivalent like that, an iterable of strings, which would be the file names, okay? Let's pretend like that's how we might do this. So we're gonna need to get our hands on those file names though. Let me make a little more room here, right? Because currently all we have are the IDs of the files themselves. We need the file names. So how can we get that? So there are a few ways that we could do that. Let me just outline a few. So first, let me comment out that little line there for a moment. And obviously, we're going to need to do this above this line here, because after we've deleted them, we won't have any access to any of this information that we're going to need, right? So one thing we could do is maybe call person repository dot, find all by ID. And then we can pass in these longs. Oh, by the way, let's not call them longs. And also we're getting an error here. And the reason for the error is because the IDE produced this delegate method as taking an input of an iterable of something that extends long. In other words, it made it generic because that's how the original signature of the underlying delete all by ID method on the person repository is. But we actually don't need that and might not even want that. So I'm just going to delete the generics there. There we go. And then that becomes easier. Okay. So one thing to kind of look out for there. All right, so we can call this, and then the other thing, let's not call this longs, let's call it IDs perhaps, or something like that. So Shift F6, I'm just gonna call this IDs. It's a little bit better for me. Okay, So this method would return, if we were to capture its output, this would return people to delete, right? That's what that would return, the people that we're getting ready to delete. And now if we wanted to get our hands on those people objects file names, that would be pretty easy to do, right? We could use the Streams API to easily extract that out of this collection, right? Let's see what that might look like. So people to delete. Ooh, except for one problem now. This is not actually a collection, it's an iterable, okay? And unfortunately, those are not quite the same thing. Functionally, they are something that we can loop over and iterate. So we could, for example, use an enhanced for loop to loop over these things, right? But unfortunately, we cannot directly just call like the .stream method or something like that on an iterable. However, there is a solution for that. So there is a, I don't remember if I showed this already. I feel like I did, but I don't know if I did or not. So there's this stream support class here, and there's a method on it called stream. And so this stream method can take two inputs, something called a splitterator, which we will be able to get our hands on in just a moment, and then like a Boolean flag to state whether or not we want to do like some parallel processing essentially, okay? So to get that splitterator guy, all we need to do is refer to this iterable people to delete dot, look at that, there's a method on it called splitterator. So that gives us one of those. Then we can do our comma and then address this second argument here, which is the Boolean here. And for now, I'm just going to keep this simple and pass in a false. All right. And so now we've got access to a stream, and I'm going to capture that stream. People stream. All right. And so now we can do our regular Streams API stuff. So people stream dot, let's see. So what are we doing here? We want to map. We want to convert these people into their photo file names, right? So we can call person : photo file name. There it is. Then we can collect those into any type of collection. It really doesn't even matter what it is. I'll collect it into a set, and we're done with that. And then just capture that file names. And then we can pass those file names into this method that does not yet exist. File names, like so. And so then I will put my cursor on the little red bit there and do an option return and allow the IDE to create that method for us. And I'm okay with that returning a void. Now, I might want to make this a little more generic, so I could either make this a collection or an iterable. I don't know, maybe I'll do an iterable. And sure, we'll call it file names. So there we have that. And now let's go ahead and actually implement the ability to delete each of these file names. So again, I'm going to borrow this one line up here where we are building that path. So I'm going to just duplicate that and then move that copy down, fix my indentation there. And then I think I'm going to surround this line. So I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to surround it with an enhanced for loop. Okay, so I'll do an Option Command T and then choose 5. And the data type will be string, file name, and we will loop over the file names. And so now we've got that file name there, like so. Then inside of this loop, so we've got a path now that's pointing to each individual file name, or each individual file actually. Okay, that's what this resulting path is. And so then we just need to delete it, right? So the easy way to do that is to call files dot delete if exists. And then we can pass in the file like so. And of course now this call can result in an exception being thrown, right? And so I don't know, maybe we'll for now just grab all of that and wrap it all inside of a try catch block. So you want to be a little bit thoughtful here perhaps. You want to ask yourself, okay, do I just want this entire operation to fail if any one of these deletion attempts fails? If so, then you may want to select this entire loop and put the entire loop inside of a try catch. On the other hand, if you ran into 1 out of 10 files that failed for some reason, that throws an exception for some reason, and you didn't want that to jeopardize the other 9 files from being deleted successfully, in that case, you could select just this one line and wrap that one line inside of a try-catch block, okay? However, now you have to decide, okay, what are you going to do about this? So this one file failed, but the other 9 didn't. So then you're probably gonna have to catch that exception right here and essentially just log it, but don't do anything about it. Maybe that's what you want, maybe that isn't. My point here is you need to think that through a little bit, okay? For right now, I think the simpler but consistent thing to do in many regards may be to just wrap the whole entire thing in a try-catch and then just rethrow an exception, okay? So we already know how to do that now, throw new, and I'm just gonna use the storage exception guy again, like before. Now, let me be careful about one thing and say this. With the way this code is currently written, if this loop has iterated 5 times and successfully deleted 5 files, and then it gets to the 6th file and runs into trouble, those previous 5 files are not going to magically come back into the file system, okay? So there's no magical transactionality built into this functionality. If we wanted that type of functionality, we would likely need to implement it ourselves, okay? So I just wanted to point that out. All right, but having said all of that, here now we have a basic implementation of a delete all by name. All right, so now let's jump back into the service, all right? And so our red marks went away. Now with the way this method is currently written, even if an exception is thrown from the attempt to delete these files from the file system, our person records would already be gone, okay? That's because I have not wrapped this method in a transactional annotation, okay? So I'm just kind of pointing that out. On the other hand though, if I did put an @transactional annotation up here, and then we threw an exception down here, these records that we attempted to delete in the database would remain, okay? They would get rolled back essentially. So again, you kind of want to think about that. How do you want this code to actually behave? And I'm not sure that there's necessarily a wrong or a right answer. It's however you want the application to actually function under various circumstances. So for now, maybe I will leave the @transaction annotation off of this method. All right, so let's jump back over to the controller and let's see if we are ready to go here. So yeah, I think we are ready to try this out. All right, so now let me go ahead and stop the application and then go back into my run configuration, edit that, and unbreak this again. So now I'm referring to a real folder that exists on my computer, and I will apply and then I will click run. All right, and let me just reload. Okay, so now we've got our people back again, and let's go ahead and create a few more people now. So who was this guy? Jake Nakos. Jake Nakos. JNack. And let's upload him. All right, so there's Jake Nakos, which actually looks like it might be a girl. I don't know what's going on with these pictures and people's names, but that's fine. And let's do at least one more. So let's come back down here. Who else do we have? Jimmy Furman. Jimmy Furman. 2002 J Firm at people.com. And 50,000. And let's save. Okay, so there's Jimmy. Again, it's a female. Yeah, I don't know what happened to the names matching up with the photos, but that's fine. Okay, and let's do one last one. Jimmy and Joseph Gonzalez. Joseph Gonzalez. 3/3/2003. And J Gons at people.com and 100,000. All right, so there's Joseph Gonzalez. So now let's jump over here and let me open up my terminal again and let's see these files. So I'm going to clear and then do an ls. So there's Joseph Gonzalez, Jimmy Furman, Jake Nakos. Okay, so the gang's all here. All right, so now let's delete these 3 people, or at least let's delete 2 of them, okay? All right, and now let's look at what's on the file system again. So there's Jake, but Gonzalez and Furman are indeed gone. Okay, so that worked fine. Okay, so looks like our person service is properly coordinating the deletions now. And let's just take another quick look at one aspect of this now. Let's see, am I on the controller? Back on the controller in the delete method. So now again, the nice thing is that the delete method doesn't need to be responsible for coordinating these multiple actions that need to occur. It now can simply say, hey, here's some IDs, go figure it out, right? And that's what you really want. You don't want to be figuring things out and implementing logic and stuff in your controller method. Now, there is such a thing as presentation logic. It is appropriate to implement presentation logic. So that would be like, how are we going to make things look? Where are they showing up on the screen? Stuff like that. That's presentation logic. And it is absolutely appropriate to implement those things either in your controller or in the HTML template file or some combination of the two. That's perfectly fine. In fact, those are the only places that you should ever be doing those kinds of things, right? But anything that isn't presentation logic, any other type of logic, ideally, you should not be implementing that kind of stuff here. It should be down in these lower layers, your service layer and your database layer. And even between these 2 layers, obviously, you want the data access related logic to be in the data layer, right? And so jumping back over to our file storage repository, that is one of the reasons that I chose to implement this little bit of logic here, this little loop down here in the file storage repository itself, because this loop does pertain specifically to deleting files from the file system, right? So I wanted that logic to be down here, but you could make an argument for doing the looping up in the service layer and just the deleting down below. An argument certainly could be made for either of those. So again, I don't want to say one way is completely wrong or right. All right, so I think that's going to wrap up what I wanted to show in this lesson. Now in the next lesson, we're going to stick with this because I want to show you at least one alternative way that we could have implemented some of this deletion functionality, okay? And I think that's going to be kind of cool. So I will see you in the next one. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content and you'd like to help me out, there are several ways you could do that. First, you can always click the like and subscribe. That'll help me out a lot. Additionally, another way you can help me out is to check the link in the description below. That'll link you to my website where you can find additional courses. And finally, for those of you who might be interested in starting a new career as a professional software developer, I offer a free PDF guide that will detail exactly how you can get started in this field with no college degree and no prior experience. All you need to do is click on the link in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.